Welcome to Write Good, the podcast that helps you write good. I'm R.S. Benedict, author, visionary, dreamweaver. In this episode, we're continuing our discussion about the perils of fandom with Tim Heiderich, author of Misunderstanding Comics and co-host of Have You Seen This?, a podcast about obscure and misbegotten cinema. Let's take a moment to talk about parasocial relationships.
Yes.
And how they relate to fandom. Do we want to define parasocial relationships, or?
Do you want to take a crack at that, or should I?
Well, maybe you should.
Oh. Well, I mean...
Is that okay, or?
Hey, can I throw out my $10 word of simulacra again?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it is something that is, masquerading as an actual relationship without really being one. It is the waitress at Hooters that rubs your back when she brings you your bill, like you not realizing like she's paid to do this exact thing, like she isn't your friend. But yeah, it's a one-sided relationship. It is like, people listening to podcasts and thinking that the podcasters, because they're accessible, are like your friends.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the relationship between a boy band and their fans.
Yeah.
Like, to the fans, this is my boyfriend.
Right.
Kind of. I mean, they don't literally believe that he's their boyfriend, but he kind of fulfills that emotional role of, like, a safe boy to obsess over and pour all of these weird adolescent horniness feelings into. And
yeah.
But he's not really your boyfriend. He's some famous guy who's paid to sing and dance and look pretty.
Yeah.
And you're a girl, and he wants you to buy tickets to his concerts, and he wants you to buy his music and posters and merchandise. But there's this weird fake pretend relationship between them.
Yeah, it's kind of a dry run of an actual relationship. It's right. All the signifiers are there without the authentic core.
Right.
The reason for the relationship actually missing, two people having some kind of connection, but yeah, all the signifiers are there in that there's like proximity and just familiarity, despite it being completely disingenuous.
Right, and it's particularly a big thing now in the era of like Twitch streamers and YouTube stars and social media stars, in that there's less of a filter between you and the person you admire. Like, you can chat live with your favorite Twitch streamer. You can leave comments on your favorite YouTube channel, and the person might respond to those comments, and you can message them back and forth and like pay to be in their Discord server. Like, yeah, like get a shout out. Listeners can do that. Get on our Discord server. That's how you can suggest episode ideas.
Yeah.
And there's this higher level of access and back and forth, but
it is paid access ultimately.
Yeah, it's paid, and it's still not a real friendship.
Yeah, like a real friendship is an organic give and take on an equal playing field. It isn't one person paying to have access to the other person. That is, like, you're basically a John to this person now.
Yeah.
Like, and really the adage that I go by is like, if she's paid to be there, she's not into you. Like, that's that I think is like the best way to keep it real. So yeah, and yeah, like, speaking of fandom and access and like this parasocial relationship, I had saw a study somewhere about how the format of a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of like YouTube reaction videos and things like that is to form that false one-on-one relationship of saying, hey,
right.
Yeah, it's me, the YouTuber, talking directly to you, where, I mean, from...
Oh, hey, guys, sorry I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, and like...
So many of them start with that, and so many of the format of those things are like people hanging out, and at first it's like, why would you want to watch a couple of dipshits hanging out? Like, why not watch some, you could go watch The Godfather or something, but it's like, oh, this is a friendship simulator.
Yeah, yeah.
I can pretend that I'm hanging out with cool people.
Yeah.
Playing video games with my bros.
Yeah, like, stripped of all content or context, it, like, a FaceTime call or like a video chat is indistinguishable from a YouTube video. And I talked to this with a friend of mine, and he came up with a a brilliant summary of it, which is, because I couldn't understand the appeal myself, and he just put it so succinctly: people are bored and lonely.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's all you have to say about it. Like, why would anyone want to pretend that they're hanging out with a person who does not know their name, does not care what's going on in their life, does not know what's going on in their life? This is not like a level playing field, egalitarian friendship. This is a one-directional simulation of a friendship, and it's like, why would anyone engage with that? It's like, well, people are bored and lonely.
Right, and it's especially telling that sort of thing's so big among young people who, I mean, as difficult as it is sometimes to make friends as an adult, if I want to leave my apartment and go talk to people, I can do that.
Yeah.
A 12-year-old can't.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you live in a place where you need to drive somewhere and you're 12, you don't have a driver's license, or maybe you have to ask your parents for permission and they won't let you.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. I could leave my apartment. I choose not to because I'm not a cool person. But the ability is there.
Yeah, I can go out there.
And so if you're a kid, especially with the way things are, kids' lives are so, like, controlled and scheduled to death by their parents. Like, that is the substitute for friendship, because mom won't let me fucking go outside.
Right, yeah. Or, you're afraid to let kids out on their own because, some kid could have read a Stephen King book and want to shoot up the school now.
Yeah.
So
instead they watch some Twitch streamer who plays video games while pushing anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. So that's cool.
Hey,
that's good.
That was just a heated
really
gamer
good that
moment.
We're doing that instead.
It was a heated gamer moment.
Heated gamer moment, shit happens.
Yeah.
Who doesn't scream racial slurs while playing video games?
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't everyone do that? That's super normal.
Yeah, I accidentally read the Cliff's Notes of Mein Kampf. Yeah, it wasn't... and someone had a funny thing about that. That was, I think it was, a lot of PewDiePie's fans were normal. Then, like, all the white supremacists came in and kind of ruined it for everyone else. But I think it was someone on Twitter who made the point. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, they all came in, but then they stayed. Like,
right.
It wasn't a repudiation of their values that caused them to be like, well, fuck this liberal douchebag. It's like, no, yeah, you can stay.
They were perfectly comfortable there.
Yeah, and so it really makes you wonder.
Yeah, like other creators, if you want to, I don't know if you want to call PewDiePie a creator, but other media people don't do that. Like,
well, you can say celebrity.
Well, for instance, Rammstein found that they had a lot of, like, weird neo-Nazi fans, because it's like, okay, we're hard rock, we sing in German. A lot of, like, dumb Americans thought that we're Nazis.
Yeah.
So their response was to make the Mann gegen Mann video, which is just basically like softcore gay porn, where the members of the band are just rolling around in a pile of, like, semi-naked, muscular dudes, which it's also, like, a mixed-race crowd. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not for you. We're not for you, Nazis.
Yeah, Rammstein, they're great at trolling. Like, it's just because, they ride that line of, like, playing within, like, the sort of metal tropes, but then also they'll just completely explode them and be like, yeah, what's more metal than, like, showing you something that makes you just really uncomfortable, especially if you're a fucking Nazi. Be like, yeah, here's something awful that you're gonna hate. So,
hey, Nazis, we're making a song about how being gay is really cool.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
That's great.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And the crazy thing too is it's like, yeah, I remember when they burst on the scene fucking 20 years ago, and it's like, how did that happen? Where did the time go?
Yeah, Jesus.
But yeah, it's interesting. A friend of a friend is an adult entertainer, and she was involved in one of their videos, and, like, the behind the scenes stuff that she was talking about was just, like, utterly fearless from them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to just think about, like, what sort of things they were improving and what sort of things, like, they obviously couldn't put into the video. But yeah, just like, it really is, it's really heartening to just see and understand just the limit that they're willing to go for the art that they do, and it's like, that's pretty badass. So
Yeah, I gotta respect that.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
So don't be a Nazi. Listen to Rammstein.
Don't be a Nazi.
Yeah.
Listen to Rammstein.
Yeah.
They're great. And anyway, going back to parasocial relationships, in fandom, I've noticed a shift from parasocial relationships with the actors or writers or directors or artists who make the thing we like, and a shift toward these parasocial relationships with the product itself, or even the industry or the corporation that creates it, like K-pop stans who support the K-pop industry even as it like really kind of chews up and abuses the pop stars they like, or Disney stans, which it's a corporation, you guys. I understand, like, you know, liking the movies, but when you're saying, oh, I love Disney, the corporate entity, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's a very hail corporate attitude. And the K-pop situation is very much a gilded cage where it's you think that it is this jet setter lifestyle of, you know, basically living the dream of being a a singer or a dancer or you know, some kind of musical entertainer, but just the short leash that they keep them on,
like they're not even allowed to admit they have a boyfriend or girlfriend in public. Like,
yeah, that is taking a cultivated image to a just pathological degree.
Yeah, and they have, I understand appearance requirements, but they're incredibly strict to the point where, like, so many of these people end up getting a fucking eating disorder, or, like, really horrible ideas about the way they look, and it's heartbreaking, because it's like, man, you're young, you're, like, 15, and you're 90 pounds, and you think you're too fat. What the fuck?
Yeah. The thing, too, that I wonder about it is, you know, given all this control over... You know, because so much of this is about control. Like, given the control over that person's image and, you know, how they're expressing themselves even in their social life and on social media, there is a point where I have to ask, is this necessary? I mean, because there have been plenty of legitimate, unpolished artists who have made a great impact and been a huge success without being so confined. And the thing that I think so much of this gets down to is that if you're a K-pop producer, then you have a very particular idea of how you want things to go, and to leave that up to chance is, you know, to get into like some 1984 shit. The notion of, do you want to abdicate absolute control over culture, over society, or, you know, or what have you. And I feel like it is very progressive to be like, let the cards, you know, fall as they may. Let things work out the way they are going to best work out. But the problem of it is that so much of it is, we have a lot of money invested in this, and we can't leave this up to chance. You know, that's why we don't have the auteur notion in filmmaking like we did in the 70s. In the 70s, it was, we will give money to this director and they will come back with the best movie they think they can make. Right. But that then turned into a studio system where it's like, well, we have some notes because this is our money and we aren't going to risk it on whatever you think is right. We're going to go with what the metrics tell us is right. And the problem is then it just completely muddles the creative process so that you aren't getting authentic, risky art. Like, you're really cutting off both ends of the bell curve here. Like, you're making sure that you don't get garbage content, but at the cost of never risking brilliant content either. Yeah. And it's heartbreaking too, because I mean, they'll employ some really, really talented people and then not give them any creative freedom. Like the guy who, I forget his name, the director of Black Panther, was not allowed to direct his own action sequences. Yeah. He just wasn't allowed to do that. Like, why do you fucking hire this guy to do this movie then if you don't trust him to do the action sequences? Yeah, and I went to a Q&A of, I also don't remember his name either, but the guy who directed the John Wick movies. And that guy is a sight to behold, because he has like zero self-doubt in anything he does. And I'm like, how do you get some of that? But he talks about directing fight scenes in his movies because he says, like, if you aren't directing the fight scenes, you're no longer the director. Like, you're the curator, but it's the fight choreographer who's directing your movies now. And if you don't take an active role in every creative decision in your movie, then you aren't a creative. You're a curator. You're letting other people do the work, and then you say, yeah, that's good. But, if you're Disney producing Black Panther, you're like, we can't leave to chance what the director's going to do. We got to make sure that things are done the right way, the Disney way. It's like comic artists conforming to a house style. It's like, you are a brilliant artist and you can make so many imaginative creative works, but this is what Wolverine looks like. This is how you draw Batman. And that is the sort of devil's bargain that you're making, because you are working within a system. You're saying, I abdicate a portion of my autonomy to work with what the system allows me to work with. It's how you get a seat at the table, basically. It's fealty to this established power structure, saying, we want this to look like a Marvel movie. We want this to be a Disney movie. I appreciate that you're a competent director, but the buck stops here, basically.
Yeah. And there is something kind of horrifying just to see fans being okay with that.
It's
like this line from Invader Zim, like, I love you, cold, unfeeling robot arm. It's just like, that's not, this is a committee now. Like, you're in love with a brand.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the Disney thing in particular, like, I really don't get, because, I mean, since, I was a cynical teenager, like, I felt like I saw, Disney for what it is, and yeah, I truly don't understand how people get sucked into that, but it's like, they are good at what they do, yes, but there's this level of, to borrow a term from wrestling that I've only ever seen in print, so I'm probably mispronouncing kayfabe.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, but the idea basically that you never break character. And I've dealt with, I've interacted with people at Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland, and, people who are huge Disney fans, and people who work for Disney but are also like actors or dancers in, other work. And yeah, it is that notion of fully committing to a role that, I don't know, it gets inside people's heads to the point where it is living that fantasy. And again, it is commendable if you're like a method actor, or, you're getting into character for work, but then to never drop character is to live in a fantasy. And there's got to be a name for people who can't differentiate between fantasy and reality. Yeah. So, I mean, I get that Disney is good at what they do, but like with the K-pop thing of just this absolute micromanaging control of like the pop stars' lives, like, do you need to buy in so wholly into the Disney lifestyle? Like, do you need to be a true believer for Disney to be successful? And then it gets into other economic issues, like, how do we define success by Disney? Because I worked for a department that there was a core number of full-time employees, aka blue badges, and there were a bunch of contract workers, aka green badges. Green badges got none of the benefits, like things to the park and like 401ks and other stuff like that. But they're the ones doing the bulk of the work. They're just disposable contract workers. And to divorce one's fandom from that reality of this being how Disney magic is produced it really takes it involves some cognitive dissonance, because you're saying like Disney is great and produces all this great TV and magic, but at the cost of, you have a director who can't direct his own movies, and you have employees that aren't worth paying basic benefits to in order to make sure that the lights stay on. It's like, how is that ethical? How is that magical? How is that justifiable?
Yeah.
So, not a huge fan of Disney.
One of my biggest complaints about them purely as a creative is the way they've killed the public domain.
Oh, yeah.
Like, things used to enter the public domain after, very short period of time. like 15, 20 years, you'd create something, you'd have 15, 20 years to make money off it, and then bam, it's public domain, the copyright expires, and that's that.
Yeah.
And now the copyright will never expire. So the rest of the culture isn't really able to take some new creation and mold it and change it and synthesize it and riff on it. Now it is solely owned by this entity that did not create it. The people who created, I don't know, Mickey Mouse are dead.
Yeah.
They've been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's still property, and it's never going to be able to change or grow organically.
Yeah.
And I find that idea very disturbing.
Yeah, because it is creating ossified culture in the way that ideas aren't allowed to die, to die and become immortal in the public domain. Like Star Wars, going back to that example, like that is something that could have came and went, like so many other things. But the people who happened to own it owned an enormous cash cow, and they never want to like lose control of that. As long as they can wring 1 red cent from that, they are never going to let that go, because they have invested in a particular successful franchise. And to throw a caution to the wind and say, this thing has had its day, let's try something new, I think that is antithetical to the business-minded nature of an entertainment corporation. And it gets into some of the 1984 ethos again, which is this is in the middle of the book where what's his name, the middle of the book, which basically turns into like a lecture on the backstory of the world of 1984, which is I forget who the antagonist is, but Winston's hearing from him and he's saying like whatever government or whatever controlling entity that they had in one way or another ultimately lost control of its populace. Every empire rose and then declined, but the goal of the government in 1984 is to make sure that they never reach that period of decline. They just want to remain in this ossified state of saying, today is, was it like that Nine Inch Nails song, every day is exactly the same? Like, yeah, like no highs, no lows, no change. It's just, you're going to watch a new Star Wars movie every year until, the day you die. These Disney movies that came out in the 90s are the only Disney movies that you're ever going to watch or ever know about. They're the only archetypes you're ever going to be aware of. And it is going to always be like that. We will try and introduce new stuff, but this is our bread and butter, are the things that are proven successes. And we're just going to keep rolling with those until the heat death of the universe.
Right.
Yeah, so...
And it also means that other people don't get a chance to riff on them.
Yeah.
It means that other people are never going to get to take the Lion King and say, well, what if I want to tell my own Lion King? What if I want to do something different with the Lion King?
Yeah, what if I want to remix that into something?
Yeah.
Or what if I want to update it for more contemporary ideas or concerns, which is why a lot of, I think, narrative in mainstream media is out of step with modern, I think, concerns or modern anxieties.
Right. This tight control.
Yeah. So, and the tough thing is, if you happen to have backed a winner and come up with a thing that is the most popular franchise in the last several decades, like no one is going to willingly surrender that. And
of course.
And it was such a case as there was a time when these things did naturally fall into the public domain and become the property of everybody. But again, with that same 1984 mentality, it was the people who came before who allowed things to fall out of their control. They're the ones who basically failed, and we aren't going to make that same mistake. And it is
right.
And it is very much a thing that I see a lot that is, I feel, unacknowledged in capitalism, is that a lot of industries are based on things that are basically given for free. Where it's like all of the like if you think of any popular Disney movies, those are based on public domain, like Grimm's fairy tales or the Arabian Nights or anything like that. Like it is something that was acquired for nothing and then turned into money.
Right, or like Amazon's business model makes heavy use of the U.S. Postal Service, this public good.
Yeah.
And then doesn't fucking pay taxes to support it.
Right, yeah. It is what, privatized profits, socialized losses.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like all the, metric and user data that social media mines from us, that is, like, we aren't compensated from that. It is simply taken from us and turned into profit for someone else.
Right.
Yeah, and it's always been that case. I mean, even going back to, like, the gold rush, like, that is gold that was ore that was just sitting there. It wasn't owned by anyone. The claim was sold, and then, like, if you found anything from it, that was sold. But it was the sort of thing that was just there for the taking, and so much of it...
And access to those lands existed because of the U.S. military driving out the original inhabitants. It wasn't just like, oh, here's this land that's just there and there's no one living here.
Yeah.
Like, there was someone living there. It's just, westward settlers, white settlers got to go there because the U.S. military sent people in to kill or chase away the original inhabitants. So it's like, cool, now you can go there with a shovel and dig some gold after... this publicly funded genocide made it available to you.
Yeah, it was public in the most broad sense. It's like, then we found a way to acquire the land and sell that. It's something that we didn't own, we took. And then from that we were able to sell so people could turn a profit from that. But yeah, every instance of it is basically, it starts with theft, which is unconscionable.
Or a public giveaway of, like, the internet, that was a government thing. Or I think some of the older, moving to the UK, sort of council houses.
Yeah.
This was originally, my understanding is limited because I'm an American and I don't know what other countries are, but this was originally sort of this public housing initiative that was pretty much given to older generations, and now these are the same older generations who don't want to give a fucking thing to younger poor people, and they want to sort of price gouge everybody for rent.
Yeah. So it's, it in so many cases, and Disney is by far no exception, but it is, it's finding something that cost nothing to acquire and then selling it. And just like that is an epic level con. So...
And then making it impossible for anyone else to sell it. No one's ever going to be able to sell Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, right. So, yeah.
Whenever it's about to enter public domain, they lobby again and get the public domain, the copyright expiration pushed back another 10, 15, 20 years. Every time. It will never enter the public domain.
Yeah. So don't feel bad about pirating a movie.
Don't feel bad about pirating a movie where all the people who made it are dead.
Yeah, for real.
None of the creators are profiting off of this. It's obscene.
Yeah, and on top of it too, like, you aren't taking money out of the pocket of the, like, the assistant makeup. Like, they got paid their day rate, and then they went on their way. Like, they don't get a piece of that movie. You could make $1 billion or it could flop. They got paid all the same. So...
We got an hourly wage and probably some snacks. From the craft service table. Hope they got some good snacks. We've talked about fandom's negative effects on the fan. What about the effects on the objects of worship? Can fandom harm the thing it loves by negatively influencing a creator's work? For instance, I'm thinking about death threats that writers get for killing off a beloved character or making too radical a change. We could bring up a little bit Alan Moore's horror at what's been done to his work by fanboys like Zack Snyder and dudes who think that Rorschach is the good guy. Is it possible for fandom to sort of influence the creator to make less creative decisions?
That is a tough one, because it's, like we were saying earlier, how much of the fan response do you want to take on board as a creator? Like, do you want to say, like, I'm writing this book according to what my values and ideas are, and I'm just going to keep on keeping on? Because in some ways that kind of, then you become like this kind of out of touch weirdo where people are like, who are they even writing for anymore? But, taken to the other extreme, It is, like you're basically writing by committee, where you're saying, hey, would you like it more if A happened or B happened? And unless you're writing Choose Your Own Adventures, that isn't a sustainable creative model.
Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is, like, I have a writer friend who churns out romance novels on for the Kindle, and she's got a pretty successful like franchise going, and she talks about how when she started, it was she started as an author. She's like, I'm going to put a lot of work and thought into this creative piece, and it did okay. And then she said, okay, I'm going to learn what all the like tricks and tropes and rules are, and everything that, as a writer, like, you have to know, like, you must know all the like inside jargon names for all these different things about, like, what different points and different turns are in a story.
Oh, right. And if you're right, depending on certain genres, you can follow an incredibly strict plot structure of here's where the twist goes and here's where the other guy goes, like here's the formula to follow. Formula. And writing romance isn't really the thing I do, so it's not super familiar to me, but I'm sure here's the romance novel formula.
Yeah, like each genre has its tropes, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh,
and so once she started writing to that formula, things became much easier, and the thing that struck me most about it is that she says readers never notice. Like, you put in a twist at a certain point, and it always hits, because people, like what I had mentioned earlier about songs hitting all the right notes, this is a song that hits all those notes that people are expecting. And like the content of it changes, but the form doesn't. And she's been able to follow this formula for however many years she's been at it, and it works. So the difficult thing in that, for someone who considers themselves a legitimate artist, is that there's this path of least resistance where you say, oh, I can just follow what the established expectations are, and I can be successful in this particular genre. But were it me in that situation, I would say it's like the what Truman Capote said, that's not writing, that's typing. Yeah.
Right.
So you have to ask yourself, like, am I an artist, or am I simply filling in the blanks? Am I churning out machine produced are
you making Big Macs here? Are you making fast food kind of?
To invoke 1984 again, like, there's that automated genre content for the proles.
Right. There was a machine that made pop songs.
Yeah. Yeah, so in a way, like, we are those machines. If we're only working according to a formula, how are we any different from an automated process? Like, if a process can be defined by rules, it can be automated.
Right. I felt that so hard. I used to work for a website where I was basically making clickbait, and we were just ruled by SEO. And when you're typing it in WordPress, there's this little widget that, like, it turns green when your SEO score is good. And it's just like, I'm putting words in a box until the light goes green.
Yeah.
I'm like I'm in a Skinner box or something. It's like, good rat.
Yeah,
you got the cheese.
That green light.
You used this phrase enough. That's good. Hit publish. And I'm like, fuck, my name is on this. God damn.
So and again, this all comes back to me, for me, this all comes back to agency, in that, are you writing according to a formula? Are you making formulaic art? And if you're making formulaic art, then you have to ask yourself, whose formula am I obeying and why? And furthermore, what is outside that formula, and what's outside that formula possibly better? So I feel like so much of fandom is, like I said, conservative in ideology, in that it's saying, I want things to be the way that I know them to work. If I know that things work this way, let's just keep doing that. And to change that invites uncertainty, and uncertainty is scary in so many ways, for so many reasons.
Right. I want a PB&J. I don't want a Cuban sandwich. I don't want pulled pork. I don't want poke. I don't want pad thai. I want a PB&J. That's what I want. I want that every day, and I want it the same
or
way
like
every
feeding
day.
a little kid. It's like, what do you want? Chicken wings or chicken wings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want tendies.
Yeah.
How about some broccoli?
Yeah,
No!
just the notion that like
I want some tendies.
that like this is what
We're out of dinosaur shapes. Will you accept the smiley shape tendies?
Yeah.
No. It's got to be dinosaurs.
like that a consumer of cuisine or culture can have their palate so degenerated to the point where like I just want this basic thing that I know what I'm gonna get, and it's bland but it hits all the right notes, and I am content with that
Right.
because I don't know what else there is.
Right. And I do get that sometimes that is what you want. Like, I will totally sometimes watch, like, yeah, I don't care what this is. Like, I'll totally watch fucking Lifetime original movies. They're just the most formulaic, total nonsense, but you know what? That's what I watch at the gym because I don't want to watch cable news. I will watch a Hallmark movie about Melissa Joan Hart falling in love with a nutcracker who's been turned into a man. That is what I want. I will accept that.
Yeah.
But, like, it's distressing when that's all there is and that's all people have and that's all that creatives are encouraged to make.
Yeah, if I can return to that metaphor of the bell curve of saying we aren't going to work outside one standard deviation, like everything gets a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that is as good as we aspire to be because we don't want to risk falling on that like lower like 32% end. But everything falls within 32 to 68, and it's that middle level of mediocrity that you got to wonder, what are you sacrificing for that stability? So
yeah. Now, let's switch from talking about the influence on the work and talk about the influence on the creators themselves. We did touch on this with the K-pop discussion, but the weird cults that surround creatives, that can't be good for them. I know Pink Floyd dealt with this a lot in The Wall. Like, basically, it turns you into a fascist.
yeah.
Like, there's a huge statement on Fandom where just Pink Floyd just outright becomes, like, rock Hitler. And he said it was based on a real incident. Like, he was performing or something, and the crowds were being their usual things, like screaming, going, I love you. And he just felt this visceral disgust for them. And he ended up spitting on a kid's face. And instead of being, like, angry, the kid in the audience was like, that's awesome, thanks, dude, this is cool. And he's like, what the fuck is this? What am I? What is... I can't... No! And that's kind of where The Wall came from, just that moment of him just spitting in a kid, like some teenager's face, and the teenager being thrilled, and him going like, geez, this is bad.
There's a point where, Raj had to walk off stage and just, like, collect himself and be like, did I just fucking spit in someone's face? Like, is this the kind of guy I am now? Because like hearing him talk and also going through so much of his lyrics, like I definitely empathize with his worldview. Like there's stuff on Dark Side of the Moon, which I don't need to sell anyone on that album, but like there's stuff on that and in The Wall that is just like it is a gut punch just to like the way that he is expressing these ideas that are really
so personal.
Yes, so personal, and just like so cutting and painful that I really appreciate that album to the level that I can't even listen to it anymore.
Yeah, I think for men especially, The Wall has particular resonance. Like, I can enjoy it, but I think it touches to this level of emotional isolation that is way more relevant to the experiences of men.
Yeah.
Than to women. Not that women don't end up lonely or isolated, but the deliberately building a wall around yourself and becoming like this fascist monster. Like,
yeah. It's like
that is modern manhood.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna put up a wall to never be hurt again for whatever antecedents that caused this feeling. And the thing that I love so much about The Wall too is that it is ultimately self-referential, because by the time you get to the end of it, like, you're listening to the album that is the result, it is the culmination of the concepts presented in the album. And yeah, just that it all comes back around. Like, even, you can look this factored up on Wikipedia. Like, there's a statement at the beginning and the end of the album that is cut in half, where it's him saying, "Is this where we came in?" And it is the first half of that statement at the end of the album, and the second half of it at the beginning. So it is an album that when you get to the end of it, you've understood the album enough to begin listening to it. It's this brilliant, like, Ouroboros concept. And yeah, the idea too that you can become so isolated in your career as a rock star to then sort of lose your essential humanity about what brought you here and what was meaningful about this role, where the lifestyle has supplanted the authenticity that merited this level of success, to the point where it's like, yeah, he goes from this tortured artist into this, like, he metamorphoses into this fascist. And like, there is that moment in the movie where, he undergoes this kind of cocoon stage, and then he emerges as, that fascist Pink. And yeah, it is him going through that feeling of just like him not being himself anymore. That is thematically tied with him, like, the actual Roger Waters spitting in that fan's face is, the Pink character becoming this fascist rock star, where it's like, I'm not even this guy anymore. Like, I've fucked up my life enough, and I've lost all the people that love me, to the point where, look, I don't fucking care anymore. I'm going to be an asshole, and fuck you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the amazing thing about that is that he then gets through that, and he's like, I can't be this person anymore.
Right.
But I am going to tell you how I became this person and how I got through it.
Right.
Yeah, just, it's fucking phenomenal album. But again, like, you don't need me to tell you that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's just amazing. It's amazing to the point I can't even listen to it anymore. I just get choked up thinking about it.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's so, like, emotionally visceral. It's amazing.
Yeah. And particularly he went to British boarding school. This is a man raised in a society that is deliberately designed to kill any kind of honest emotional expression, and to just completely stomp out any kind of genuine softness or poetry or beauty or emotional honesty. I mean, there's the boarding school scenes. There's just, the meat grinder metaphor is very straightforward. And there's just also that scene that, is directly lifted from his childhood of, he's just sitting in class writing poetry, and his instructor's like, "You're writing poetry,
poems, everyone." Yes, poems.
Like, that definitely happened to him.
Yeah. New car, caviar.
Like, oh, you're dealing with your feelings in a healthy, expressive way?
Yeah,
Fuck you.
We're all going to mock you now, so take that, young Roger.
Yeah, take that, you fucking 10-year-old child.
Yeah, you fucking...
Like,
goddamn.
goddamn.
Child. Who treats a child that way?
Literally a child. Like, the whole process of boarding school, like... Oh, you're 8 to 10 years old. We're going to take you away from your family and put you in a rigidly hierarchical institution based on human cruelty.
Yeah.
This is a good way to run a country.
Yeah. And to think that they exported that. Well, so.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I wonder why so many of them end up pedophiles. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wonder if there's any influence. I don't know.
Just want to steal that innocence from someone else.
Yeah, innocence. I used to have that. I'm going to take it.
Yeah. I need to steal your innocence now, yeah. And on and on.
Oh, God. Now, there's also the opposite side of that is like, there's Pink, who got kind of turned into a fascist. The opposite side is that weird negative fandom where it's like part of the creator's total dissolution is part of the entertainment. Like, I'm thinking of Amy Winehouse around the end, where it's like, oh, look at her. She just had another nervous breakdown in public. It's great. It's so entertaining.
Laughing at Britney Spears with a shaved head.
Yeah, like, she's having a nervous breakdown. Isn't that funny? Like, not really.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, and it does speak to the Pink Floyd sense of isolation, because And I forget who else this applied to, but, Britney's a great example of just no one being able to understand, like, that level of, I think, pressure
Right.
that the pop star is under. And that's a thing, too, that...
When everybody called her fat for being, like, 125 pounds or something at the music video awards. Like, Jesus Christ, dude.
The pig, yeah.
Look at her.
Like,
she looks cute. She looks fine. This fatty. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, or like Lady Gaga at the Super Bowl, or like showing a bit of her midriff, and someone's like, she's really chubby. And it's like, no, that's a normal woman's body.
That's what a human looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, like the sense of, like, it's almost like an impossible situation for a normal person to relate to, because for someone who's never had that level of success, you think, well, this has got to be all, sunshine and rainbows. I watched the Katy Perry documentary as a goof. I don't remember why, but someone pointed out to me, like, how they found the ending really affecting, because it takes a turn about her marriage, I guess, with Russell Brand breaking down. I don't know how the two of them got married in the first place, but she is just like, she is on the level of, like, a nervous breakdown, but still has a job to perform. And there's someone, like, there's some part at the end of her, like, getting ready to start a show, and, like, she's just so, like, racked with anxiety over, like, her failing marriage and her life falling apart, that she's, like, dry heaving into this bucket.
Duh.
And then finally she just composes herself, and she, like, turns to the guy who's running the platform and, like, gives him the nod, and she plasters on a smile, and up she goes and starts the show. And it's like, that's what you sign up for, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I'd like that.
No, yeah.
I don't think I'd like that. That wouldn't feel good. I don't think I could do that. I'm not great at pretending that shit's okay.
Right.
That's why I write hard.
Yep. You'll never afford a Murcielago with that idea, with that attitude.
Yeah.
I'm sure I butchered that Lamborghini name, but
oh, that's okay.
Never gonna see one anyway.
We're not rich enough to know how to pronounce that word.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah, that's it's a crazy amount of pressure, and this isn't even on the fans. This just seems like the nature of the work,
right? And
it's a devil's bargain in a way.
Yeah, but in a way, I mean, that is part of the fandom. Is that, like, there was this great piece in Electric Literature that wrote about the recent Judy Garland biopic, and they said, well, Judy Garland had good fans and bad fans, and there were the fans who just kind of loved her singing, and then there were the bad fans who loved the train wreck, too. And like that, it was kind of this cruel schadenfreude bit of entertainment. And after a certain point, it's like, is it moral to still want and to be entertained by this person who should probably be in rehab right now?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots died, his wife wrote this heartbreaking op-ed or essay in I think Rolling Stone, and she said, this wasn't the day he died. He died a long time ago. This was the last day that he could be propped up in front of a microphone for an audience to extract money from people's pockets.
Oof.
And just basically about how people are going to write these retrospectives on his life, glamorizing this rock star party guy lifestyle and romanticizing it. And there's nothing fucking romantic about trying to find a way to explain to your daughter that her father didn't make it to her school recital because he was on heroin.
Yeah.
Like, there's no fucking there's nothing romantic about trying to get your husband to sober up because it's his weekend to see his daughter and you want your daughter to have a relationship with her father, but holy fuck, he is on something that he shouldn't be on right now.
Yeah, there's so many other, like, pressing factors that after a certain point you can't push back against them. Like, then you kind of become, and this is a metaphor that I use a lot to describe Taylor Swift to some of my friends, is that the pop star themselves is sort of like the mermaid on the prow of the ship.
That is great.
Yeah, because it's like, it isn't just them. Like, they are the visible, attractive part that it attracts your attention, but there's so much more going on behind the scenes, and in a way, like, they have as much say over the direction of the ship as, or they have, like, no say in it. Because, yeah, there's so much more going on behind the scenes of just anonymous people that are steering this, and all you're meant to see is the flashy thing up front.
Right.
So, but in that way, like, it shows that they're really just, part of a team, and in a way, kind of an object within that team. Like, they are a product being sold that just also happens to be a living human being who, feels love and is loved, but also has these insane obligations.
Right. Anyway, we've been talking about mermaids at the prow of a ship, the ship of late-stage capitalism, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, which brings us to my next topic. Is fandom a capitalist plot? Cat, stop trying to eat my shirt. Stop it. Okay. Now, since I write in sci-fi and fantasy, I hear this common narrative, and here's the common narrative. Back in the day, geeks were the downtrodden kids in high school, bullied and abused for their interests. But now geek culture is mainstream. Movies are all about superheroes or aliens or wizards, and everybody plays video games. And so these downtrodden geeks have won. As the narrative goes, the downtrodden geeks have won. But there's another side to this, which is that geek fandom is very profitable. Geeks spend a lot of money on toys and t-shirts and Funko Pops to show their fandom. So corporations have a big incentive to push geeky media and to breed geeky fandom. Like Nightcrawler of the X-Men is going to sell more toys than Nightcrawler, the sociopathic Jake Gyllenhaal character who deftly exploits our profit-driven news media's addiction to lowest common denominator, blood and guts. So did fandom arise organically out of sincere love of geeky media, or are fans just sort of pawns in the hands of our capitalist overlords?
I think that there was initially, and this might be my own naivete, but I think that there was initially some validity behind the secondary signifiers of fandom being like collectibles and magazines and stuff like that. But I think that it became one of those things that once it was realized to be an exploitable resource, then that all, like, the valid reasons for a thing existing in the first place got sidelined in place of how do we make money off of this and how can we game the system. So yeah, if you want to describe fans as pawns, then yeah, marketing is the game that they're playing, which is owners of intellectual property saying how can we expand the market for this, which is how you get things in like MCU of how you get like Black Panther, or how you get like a Wonder Woman movie or like Batwoman or something, which is to say we are, or even like Pride Month, you get companies providing a rainbow logo, and they're like, hey,
right,
gay money spends just as good as everyone else's.
Yep. Superman makes a vague statement about inclusion.
Yeah,
but
and it's like
still nobody's actually openly gay.
Right? Yeah.
J.K. Rowling declares yet another character was gay, although it did not happen in the books and will not happen in the movies that she's still making. She made a movie with young Dumbledore and young whatever the fuck Johnny Depp's character was. The character, she like retconned them as gay. They were not gay in the movie.
Yeah.
Because God forbid we risk some of our fucking profit.
Yeah, someone might have a problem with that.
We don't love the gays that much.
Yeah, and in that level, it's all kind of glad-handing, and it's saying, whether you are a black person with money who wants to go to a movie, or a woman with money who wants to go to a movie, or a lesbian with money who wants to watch, a show on the CW, these companies are more than happy to provide content as a way to, expand their media offerings to a wider audience. It isn't that we want to tell stories that are authentic to these particular communities. It is a way to say we want our existing properties to expand into those communities, and it is just them further expanding their domain, spreading their tentacles insidiously into other realms that were heretofore on the quote-unquote margins, but they're saying, hey, we don't want you to be marginalized. We want you to be part of our empire, part of our community.
Right. And there's something insidious about that too, and that instead of these communities telling their own stories, it's, oh, well, we'll just take this really crappy representation from Marvel, as opposed to women writing their stories about actual women's lives, and not, oh, here's a super powered ubermensch who's a lady.
Yeah, it's like, huh? That's enough for you, right?
That speaks to you as a woman, right? I identify with that.
If we recontextualize what the range of what is considered being a woman to something that can be defined by an existing property, I know, like, I'm leaning really heavily on 1984, but it is kind of newspeak in a way, in that it is saying, as long as you can express yourself using the words that we provide you,
right,
then you're free to express yourself however you want. You can say you identify with either Captain Marvel or you identify with Wonder Woman more, but those are your choices. And it's just like, and that's it. So, and this gets back to something that I saw in neoliberalism in the last election in like 2016 or so, the notion of even the, like the liberal democratic.
Which of Jeffrey Epstein's friends do you want to vote for?
Right. Yeah. The idea that we're reaching out to marginalized communities. We don't care if you're a person of color, or if you're, a woman, or if you're transsexual or anything like that. As long as you support us, we're cool with you. But it's like, that's kind of the cart before the horse. And it was kind of the problem of, Hillary's campaign, the notion of like, I'm with her. And it's like, no, she's with us. Like, you forget what the power dynamic is supposed to be.
Yeah, it kind of took the idea of a fandom.
Yeah.
It took the template of a fandom, except the fandom wasn't there.
Well, that's probably the biggest problem of it. But yeah, just the notion that like you're a civil servant and you're supposed to support us. But it was more about
let's wish happy birthday to this future president. Let's write her a birthday card. Like,
I cringe so much at that. Yeah.
Like, it was assuming that this fandom was already there, and as opposed to trying to win people over.
Yeah, and it really gets more into the idea of we are interested in having traditionally marginalized groups supporting our platform because we want the support of those marginalized groups, not we want to support those marginalized groups.
Right.
We want to include them in our little pyramid scheme. But it's just it just rings so false that, of course, people didn't respond to that, and that's how Hillary lost her second election.
Yeah.
I mean, well, first she lost to Obama, then she really lost to Trump. And it's again that same notion of like, we want you to come and work for us, and it's like, no, like, you're the civil servant and you support our communities, not us falling in line with us being your water carrier, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so much of it is, the idea that you are sublimating your own agency in support of something that is bigger than yourself, which I think really does a disservice to the human condition.
Right.
So yeah, whether it's fandom, I know that took a political bend there, but yeah, like, I think that it's the same forces at work here. It is saying we have an established franchise that we need your support to perpetuate at the cost of you, the individual. Yeah,
and honestly, that is how a lot of sort of politics does seem to work. Like, here's the this fandom, here's the that fandom, here's the Trump fandom, here's the Kamala Harris fandom, and it's like about being part of this fandom and not so much about, okay, what are my actual interests here?
Yeah, what are the things that benefit me, rather than me just being a part of something of which I am a small cog. And it's like, there are enough people who are small cogs and things as it is. Like, we don't need to cultivate that any further than we already have.
Yeah. So let's look onward and talk about alternatives to fandom. Now that we've definitively proven that fandom is terrible, what are some better ways to engage with media, to engage with culture?
Yeah, to your point, I mean, I just want to reiterate the idea that don't be someone else's water carrier. Like, you, and I am speaking directly to you, the listener, like, you are worth more than that. The question is, like, who do you work for? Like, who's really in charge here? Like, are you like a fan or like an addict? Or like, are you sublimating your own agency to something bigger than yourself? And if so, for what? Like, I think that a fan can and should expect to outgrow what they like. I mean, you know, I'm not obviously not a religious person, but there is that passage about I once thought as a child, and then there was a time where I put away childish things.
Right.
And I do believe that comes to everyone. If you like the same things in your 40s that you liked in your teens, I want to say that there's something wrong there, because it shows that your life is stagnating. And what the market forces are behind that are uncertain to me. I believe that it could be, you know, economically due to the creation of a sort of generational underclass. I mean, look at the wealth of like boomers versus Generation X and millennials, and you can see how it isn't just wage slavery perpetuating the cycle, but it is a generation born into bondage. And that this culture may just be a reflection of that notion that later generations aren't allowed their own agency. They aren't allowed to be complete people. They are only allowed to be supporters of things larger than themselves, because they themselves are never allowed to be significant, which I think is just absolutely fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So I think that initially fandom was an awareness of culture, and that existed on its own merits. But at some point, you know, exhaustive awareness of culture, you know, has like supplanted the understanding of that culture. Like, to put it more simply, it's like knowing a lot about a topic versus understanding it. And I think that if there isn't any incentive to increase understanding about media or media criticism, it is only about interfacing with entertainment on the most, you know, shallow reactionary level. But, you know, it's more important to see the man behind the curtain and understand the ways in which you're being manipulated, and to ask yourself, what is it that fandom is asking of me?
Right.
And wondering if that is a thing that you are prepared to give up in service of entertainment.
Right.
It's a complex issue, and there are a lot of angles to it, which I think we have discussed exhaustively. But yeah, I think that as a fan, and this is something that, again, like in Misunderstanding Comics and in my day-to-day life as a fan of so many different kinds of media, I mean, I have to ask myself, what are the creative things that I'm giving up in service of being a fan? In fan service, I guess. And is that, like, which is the thing that is more valuable to you? And for some people, being a fan is enough. I don't want to denigrate that, because not everyone has the same kind of drives or motivations. And for some people, being, you know, super into something gives their life meaning. I think that being, you know, super into something and knowing all the minutiae about it isn't the same as having a deep, nuanced understanding of it. And that, as a fan, is something that's important to express. Like, I mean, I feel like, of course, tooting my own horn, I think that, you know, my explanation of why The Wall resonates for me is an example of positive fandom. And I think that if there are people who can express and introspect about what is meaningful to them about fandom, and then be able to apply that to enriching their life, then great. But if it's just arguments about who would win in a fight, maybe that isn't the best use of your one life that you're given, basically.
Right.
Not to get too heavy.
In conclusion, fandom is a land of contrasts.
I think we finally solved the issue of fandom.
I think that's it. I think that's our thesis.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go, anything you'd like to talk about? Anything you'd like to plug?
Well, you can get all this and more, deep media criticism from the Have You Seen This podcast. We're HYST Pod on Twitter. Our website is haveyouseen.us. We have a Patreon, so if you just look up, Have You Seen This? We're on there, and for a scant $2 a month, we do a couple of episodes every month highlighting obscure and misbegotten cinema. Trying to expand our listeners' awareness of different media and hoping to enrich their understanding of it. I was the writer of the Misunderstanding Comics satire. It's available on Comixology. It's on Amazon, but we prefer you buy it directly from us at misunderstandingcomics.com. I am personally sealing the envelope and mailing those out. Other than that, I got a defunct website at timtoon.com. You want to see some animation that I did several years ago that Nickelodeon was a fan of. Mike Judge liked it, won some awards, and then I dropped it.
That's all for this episode. If you like what you heard, head on over to patreon.com/writegood, that's RITEGUD, and sign up. Subscribers get bonus episodes on topics like Franz Kafka and Cabaret, access to our Discord server, and mastery over the 4 elements. Join us next time when we talk about scams and swindlers in the publishing world. Until then, keep writing good.
This has been Write Good with R.S. Benedict, hosted by R.S. Benedict and produced by Matt Keeley for KS Media LLC. This has been a Kitty Sneezes production. For comments and concerns, please write to us at writegood@kittysneezes.com. That's RITEGUD @kittysneezes.com. If you'd like to support us, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/writegood.
kittysneezes.com in color.